We've got breaking news. We just filed a brief to take down Jack Smith.
Keeping you informed and engaged, now more than ever. This is Sekulow. We want to hear from you. Share and post your comments or call 1-800-684-3110. And now your host, Jordan Sekulow.
All right, folks, 4 days away until the election, one of the most important elections in history and certainly in my lifetime. Of course, we encourage you to know how to early vote. If you're still able to do that, take advantage of it. If early voting has come to a close or it comes to a close soon in your state, start shifting as well to talking with neighbors, talking with friends, talking with family about getting them out on election day as well. But every state is different, so know your rules and make sure you're not only getting yourself out to vote and your immediate family or who you're in the household with, but also trying to reach out and getting, an additional 10 people who may be, again, very supportive of the same ideology or vote for the same way that you would vote, but maybe have some difficulty getting to the polling place or have more questions or not sure if they have the time to vote. Volunteer if they need help or assistance in any way. Try to provide it for them or find someone else who can provide it for them, because it's that key and that important. Now, at the ACLJ, we have been through this protect the vote moment, defending the election integrity. And of course, we've been utilizing the ACLJ election hotline, which I encourage you to utilize either pre-election day. We've been assisting people at aclj.org/election hotline. We will be assisting people on election day Tuesday, and we're ready to go for anything that may be necessary following election day as well. So you want to check that out. Of course, that resource provided to the whole country and anybody who needs it because of your financial support of the ACLJ. We started the challenge earlier, so this final week of the month now going into November, to make sure we had the resources before, during, and after the election to assist anyone and everyone that we can to make sure their vote is counted, to make sure any questions they have are answered, if they were treated wrong, if they think that their vote didn't go through correctly. We're able to help at aclj.org/election hotline because of our donors, and that's because of you folks. If you donate today, your donation is doubled, so you can double the impact of your donation. So we have all the resources we need to file before, like we have two at the U.S. Supreme Court. One we've already won, one we're waiting for. That's the case out of Pennsylvania. We've also got a new filing today at the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. As you heard in the tease, this is to take down Jack Smith, and it's the case out of Florida, out of the district court there, now heading to the 11th Circuit, the ACLJ filing. And this case is about whether or not it's constitutional to have Jack Smith as a special counsel when it is not an office that is approved by Congress, so it hasn't been legislated, so there's no process to go through. But yet, then how does the Department of Justice create this kind of mega prosecutor or U.S. attorney who has unlimited jurisdiction all around the country, and every other prosecutor with limited jurisdiction or U.S. attorney has to go through the confirmation process? Why doesn't Jack Smith? Why can you create someone who has more power to prosecute in more jurisdictions without the limits of location, and they don't have to go through any process at all? They can have their own budget, their own team, and this, of course, is challenging this whole idea of special counsels, which has become a problem, which we saw under the Trump administration. So we're filing there as well. We get back from this break. U.S. Senator Tommy Tuberville will be joining us. He's the senator from Alabama. He has been very busy as well across the country, so you don't want to miss that. Again, that's coming up next. We'll take your phone calls, 1-800-684-3110. This is the time. This is that going into that weekend, getting people out to vote, making sure if early voting is finished or finished soon in your state, that you know the rules for Election Day so that you can assist people if you've already voted. And if you haven't already voted, make a plan for Election Day. Support the work of the ACLJ. Double the impact of your donation while we defend the integrity of the election. Donate today at aclj.org.
The ghost of Joe Biden haunting the Harris campaign.
Garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
One anonymous Democrat member of Congress who's up for re-election says someone needs to park Biden out of sight until after the election.
The White House stenographers come with the House. They are not political. Some of them have been there since Trump and will be there after Biden. And they are now as mad as you will ever hear a stenographer on the record that White House officials working for President Biden tried to change the meaning of their transcript. So it sounded like the president on that Zoom with Voto Latino was just criticizing a comedian instead of all Trump supporters. So now we've got a supervisor from the stenographer's office who is saying, our stenography office transcript released to our distro, which includes the National Archives, is now different than the version edited and released to the public by press office staff.
It reinforces what voters already sense about the Democrats, is that they view that anyone who doesn't vote for Kamala Harris is a racist, a bigot, sexist, who believes in fascism. And this, you see Michelle Obama out there campaigning, saying you have to vote for Kamala Harris, men, otherwise you don't care about women. And this is just a very demeaning, condescending campaign that they're running.
Let's play it one more time.
The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
There's nothing inadvertent about that, period. That's objective. It's not subjective.
The Harris campaign keeps losing control of news cycles because of this garbage comment and the cleanup, and White House staff apparently trying to change the meaning of something that everybody who has watched the clip could hear with their own ears. It is looking like this is becoming a case, a classic DC case of the cover-up being worse than the crime, and the crime was pretty politically bad.
All right, welcome back to Sekulow. We are joined right now by U.S. Senator Tommy Tuberville of Alabama, and I want to go right to Coach Tuberville. And, Coach, I wanted to ask you this, because we've talked a lot about it, everybody's talking a lot about the general election, but one thing I always remind people across the country, and it really doesn't matter if you're in a red state or a blue state, a purple state, because we've got Senate races that are so important to the outcome of the control of the U.S. Senate. And I know that you've been working very hard across the country as well, because we can elect a Republican president, that everybody would be excited about that, and electing President Trump, next week. But if we don't have a Republican Senate, there's going to be serious problems for President Trump and getting through any of the nominees, as well as the legislative priorities that the reason why we want him back in office.
Well, you're exactly right. And again, thanks for having me on. The problem that President Trump will have when he gets elected, if we don't get the House and the Senate, they're going to spend most of the next year trying to impeach him. You heard Jamie Raskin, Democrat congressman, basically say about a month ago that there's no way we're going to allow this guy to take over as president of the United States. So, the Democrats have ruined about everything they've touched. You just talking and about the election process. They have absolutely destroyed our election process. It should be one-day voting, absentee ballots, and paper ballots, voter ID, but they don't want anything to do that. They want to manipulate everything, and that's the reason they can't allow President Trump to get in, because he knows a lot of them are going to really suffer the consequences when he gets elected.
Yeah, I mean, Coach Tuberville, we have a situation we're filing it in Pennsylvania right now, along with the RNC, and in the ACLJ filing, and the case is about, in Pennsylvania you can file your mail-in ballot, and then at the same time the Pennsylvania Supreme Court said, which is different than the law there, that if you think for some reason that you might have messed up when you filed that ballot, you can go and cast a ballot on Election Day as well. So you see how that immediately causes a disaster for Election Day, the vote counting and the election workers, because now somebody who had one ballot in has now got two, and which one is the first one wrong or not? Which one counts? What do you do with that situation? And it's like these courts are doing this on purpose, days before an election. Now, I know you're headed to Ohio, which is a key state, not just for the presidential race, but the Senate race there as well. You talk about, again, the House, the Senate, this idea. In my opinion, Coach Tuberville, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this as well. If again, we don't have control of the House and the Senate, and President Trump is elected, I think it's going to be a very dangerous time and tough, difficult time in the country, even between next Tuesday and when he takes the oath of office. And getting him to that point of taking the oath of office without delays, because it appears that the Democrats have at least told us they've got a number of strategies to try and hamper and kind of slow down, drag out, even if President Trump wins.
Well, you're exactly right, and that's right up their game plan. Their game plan has been for years to manipulate the voting system to where they can create controversy. As you just said, Pennsylvania, there's voting machines in Georgia that President Trump, you push his selection and it goes to Kamala Harris. I mean, they've done the same thing to our country. Now, they did this to voting because they want to remain in power. They want to do everything they possibly can. I've seen all the data from 2020. President Trump was he was up 200,000 or 300,000 votes in almost all swing states, and for some reason they shut the counting down, sent everybody home, and the next morning President Trump is behind. Now, it is, again, controversial. The thing we need to do is have a holiday for Election Day. You go vote, let everybody just relax and do it the right way. Absentee ballot would be fine, but this ballot harvesting and all this stuff, it all creates a controversy, as you just said, of who wins. If President Trump does win, man, they're going to throw a wrench in the system, say there's no way, we're going to send this guy to jail. We're not going to certify his election. It's a disaster. And it's all because of the Democrats. All we wanted in the Senate now was the SAVE Act the last 3 months, saying, listen, let's do the SAVE Act. That way everybody knows that if you vote and you're an illegal, you go to jail. We have a fair election, and whoever wins, wins. And we go along the next 4 years, and we have another one. But there's no way that these Democrats want a fair election. They want the illegals to vote. In my state of Alabama right now, we're being overrun by Haitians. It is absolutely ridiculous what's going on. Running our education system, our hospitalization, and, we love people. But let me tell you, American taxpayers can't afford what's going on right now.
So, Coach Tuberville, this is Jordan's producer, Will. And first of all, I do want to thank you for 4 great years as an undergrad at Auburn, where being on the plains on a Saturday in the fall was probably the best place in America to be. But we have a vice presidential nominee right now that is trying to connect with the American people through his experience as a high school football coach. But we're seeing him use odd language like AOC runs a mean pick 6 and huddle up, we're in the final quarter. Is his ploy of trying to be relatable backfiring?
I don't know where they got this guy from, what rock they got him up underneath there. I tell you, they have so many options that they could have done so much better than this clown. But, he's calls himself a coach. He's putting tampons in the elementary schools and high schools from men's restrooms. You got to be kidding me. I mean, for the last four years, I've sat back and listened to these people think and tell people that men can have babies. That just tells you how crazy these people are and how much they want to brainwash the American people. But, Tim Walsh he's not qualified to be anything, especially a football coach, and that's much more, to me, much more of a requirement to be qualified than Vice President of the United States, because they don't do anything anyway.
I mean, I think that's interesting because he came out strong, and then he's kind of been, like you said, he's kind of been hidden under a rock since he's been introduced, and you don't see him too much out on the campaign trail. But this idea, again, I think that if it's the final message that kind of kicked everybody into gear, Coach Tuberville, and we're talking to U.S. Senator Tuberville from Alabama, is the idea, again, this garbage comment from President Biden that sits out there. There's this whole this whole fight between the White House stenographers and the National Archives because they try to put like an apostrophe somewhere to try to change the meaning of the sentence. The idea is we all know, and I think you can speak to this too, that is how they feel about most of us. I mean, they may not feel about some of the moderates who like to play games with them and love to make deals with them, but for most of us on the right side of politics in America, they do think we're a bunch of garbage. And that's exactly why they would, even if President Trump's elected Tuesday, with all of this mess and with all the numbers floating around, all the different ballot issues, that they will do anything possible to prevent us from having control and getting our legislative priorities through, because they actually believe that about us, and not just the elected officials, but the people who are voting for you.
Yeah, our country's in serious trouble. And President Trump's going to have his hands full, and thank God he's got a team of people like Elon Musk and Robert Kennedy Jr. and people that are really, really smart, that love this country. Now, something's going on right here, and I don't know what it is. Kamala Harris is out there with 50, 60,000 people on the mall in Washington, D.C. Now, in D.C., a Democrat can get 100,000, 150,000, because that's all that lives up there. Right. It's 95% Democrats. But it's kind of suspicious that Jill Biden and Joe Biden go in there and say, somebody open a laptop up and get me on Zoom. I want to make a statement. Yeah. During her speech, and he gets on there and calls Trump supporters garbage. And he well knows what he's doing. Now, he doesn't have both oars in the water, but he well knows what he's doing, because he did not want to leave that office, and he was forced out. And I'm not so sure who he voted for when he voted for last week, but that was all by design. And I'm going to tell you, these people have no plan whatsoever for our country. All their plan is to turn us into globalist, socialist, and make the American taxpayers pay for everything and put us under. And that's the direction that we're headed if we elect these two people that they've got up for president, vice president next week.
Coach, I know that, again, you brought up some of the issues with voting, but one thing I wanted to make clear to everybody listening to our show and watching our show throughout the week, and the weeks that we've been leading up to this with early voting is as of right now, take advantage of the laws in your state, know the laws in your state. So whether it's election day voting or early voting in person, or if you had to do absentee for some reason. But I told them, I said, we will all work on all of the issues surrounding the voting, whether it's legal challenges we've got to file. We got about a minute left here, though. I think just hearing from you directly about how important it is for everybody here listening and to get their friends and family out as well to vote, whether that's through some early process or on Election Day Tuesday.
Yeah, we've done a much better job other than 2020. Laura Trump's been in charge of it. She has got groundswell lawyers, people in places in the swing states. We've done our due diligence. Again, you can't, we're not going to allow them to shut the polls down. We're not going to allow them to count votes without the Republicans there. They're not going to be able to do what they did last time. So hopefully we get a good, fair accounting. If we do, President Trump will win. We'll win the House and the Senate. And American people want to take their country back. So I'm looking forward to a great day on Tuesday. I'll be with President Trump Tuesday night, and maybe we'll have a great celebration.
Sounds good. Coach Tuberville, as always, we appreciate you joining the broadcast. We appreciate everything you're doing for our country as a leader from Alabama, a national leader as well. I'd like to have you on, too, after the election. We'll be right back on Sekulow. This case out of Virginia, this involved the Department of Justice and the Virginia governor's office, Governor Youngkin, who had this amount of people, 1,600 at the case that was before, ultimately, that has the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals now, that a district court judge said those 1,600 non-citizens, they filled out paperwork, they are legally residents inside the United States, but they are not citizens, so they shouldn't be on the voter rolls. And the governor attempted to remove them from the voting rolls, 1,600 names. And the Department of Justice, which is kind of bizarre, you would think, why does the Department of Justice say we need to file a lawsuit to put 1,600 people on a voter roll who shouldn't be? Well, the ACLJ, by the way, we are in this case at the Supreme Court. So we took really quick as you could take, action at the American Center for Law and Justice. The timeline the Supreme Court has set now, it put a stay in place of the district court. So what that means is Governor Youngkin in Virginia can go ahead and remove those individuals from the ballot, from the voting rolls, so that they are not, their names aren't there and they will not be listed. If they did come, they would not be on the voter files. The Department of Justice, again, could try to speed this up, but the election is, of course, next Tuesday. People are already early voting all across the country. So if you look at the timing, there's no way that this stay gets lifted before Tuesday. So this is the first, I'd say, big victory going into this election. And you may say, wow, 1,600 names. We all know how close these elections are. We all know how important not just the presidential race could be, but also all of the other races going on in Virginia, the congressional races. So 1,600 Yeah, it may not sound like a ton to you. You can win a state based off that many voters.
Welcome back to Sekulow. This is Logan Sekulow now sitting in. Jordan had an appointment he needed to get to, so I subbed in. I thank you for all of you who watched last night, our special. I really appreciate it. It's available now on our YouTube channel, on Rumble channel, and of course on ACLJ.org. And thank you again for all who tuned in last night and watched it. Now, Rick Rennell is joining us because, look, there was a big controversy with President Biden's statement that came out where he said, called all Trump supporters garbage. Now, in that moment, a transcript came out. That transcript all of a sudden had an apostrophe. And now we know there's almost a whistleblower situation happening between the White House stenographers, people you don't want to make mad, apparently, because they will go to the press and say, this is not what we stood for. There was no apostrophe. We are submitting it to the formal record that there was no apostrophe, that he called Trump supporters garbage. Rick, maybe this is the one time where the stenographers have a moment to really change the way people feel about this administration.
Look, I think we're in a unbelievable point where the career officials, civil servants of the federal government are pushing back on the overreach of the Joe Biden, Kamala Harris team. They have been able to get away with lying to the public for years. And I think that the stenographers, people who are career officials, have had enough of this administration and the manipulation that the media does. Now, what's remarkable is that we didn't get this strong of a pushback from the media. We got it from career officials. And that's, I think, a condemnation of the media. It shows just how much the media is not credible in covering Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
And part of that report was that they were being pressured, right? Well, they were being pressured to make this change. They said, well, we discussed it with President Biden, and he said that's not what he meant, so you guys need to change it.
Right. The press office said they conferred with the president and that they got his meaning down, which just comes across as so Soviet, Rick, that they can't own the words. They could have actually probably made this story go away if they said something to the effect of, President Biden, in the heat of the moment, because he was so frustrated with the comedian's comments, said supporters when he and does not in any way want the American people to think he is casting a blanket net on all Americans. But instead, they tried to do this retroactive fix with grammar rules to try to make it seem as if your lying ears are betraying you. It just comes across as so Soviet.
Well, let's be honest. These stenographers have clearly been through this before. This is not their first time because they're so frustrated they're pushing back. The big question is, how many times did this happen before? How many times did the stenographers clean up mistakes from Joe Biden? This is really a scary moment because reporters at the White House are responsible for being for telling us in a transparent way exactly what's happening inside the White House, not playing politics, not playing for the Democrats, not cleaning up mistakes afterwards so that the public doesn't know what the mistakes are. And that's what we're seeing. Stenographers have had enough, and this is clearly not the first time. The big question is, what are the other instances where the Biden-Harris team has pressured employees to clean up their mistakes?
Rick, it's been obviously very exciting and exhilarating time for the campaign. It's been kind of fun to watch all of the changes. And, of course, as Trump very quickly flipped that garbage term in his favor and really kind of took the wind out of the sails of that, alleged story that was going to last. They thought this was it. This was that moment. And it's been exciting to watch heading into Tuesday. A lot of people were over at my house yesterday. It's obviously the topic of conversation. The fact that you could have a candidate, or we could compare and contrast. We talked about this the other day. If you have a Tim Walz who is out there trying to pretend to be a hunter and shoot and can't figure out how to load a gun and can't do. And look, put me in that situation, it's going to be the same result. But I wouldn't put myself in that situation. But somehow you have President Trump getting himself in a garbage truck, and it works because he's kind of in on the joke, in on understanding how the American people not only see him, but see the way he can connect.
Well, I think also it's a credible, authentic moment because we all know that the working class people across this country believe that Donald Trump is their champion. He's the one who delivers peace, who delivered a better economy. And so garbage men across this country know that Donald Trump is for them. I guarantee you, if we took a poll of garbage men and women across the United States, Donald Trump would win. So when he goes to defend garbage men and emphasize just how the President of the United States, Joe Biden, has turned against half of the country to call us garbage, it's an authentic moment because people know exactly that this administration has spent years demonizing their opponents.
And Rick, there's also the sense of the campaign having fun during this final stretch. Like they understand the stakes, but are able to be nimble, quickly turn around something that is devastating for the Harris campaign and for the legacy of President Biden, but to turn it into something fun and joyful, celebrating real Americans instead of the coastal elites that are funding the Harris campaign. And I feel like the contrast between the fake joy that the Harris campaign tried to launch with the real joy you're seeing from everyday Americans and Americans forgotten by Washington, D.C. for decades is such a stark contrast as you head towards November 5th.
Yeah, well, look, I can tell you, knowing President Trump personally, that this absolutely came from President Trump. He is somebody who loves humor, who uses humor and makes people feel relaxed. If you have ever been around President Trump, he makes people feel relaxed. He's not an elitist, and he goes out of his way to make people feel relaxed. He uses humor, and when something like this happens, he's all in. He wants to jump in and emphasize the point using a little fun and humor.
Yeah, absolutely. I can say from experience, one of the very few times I've spent with him, he was with my children, and it was with my whole family. And immediately the kids were at ease. They took kind of fun pictures with him. He invited them to take pictures. We walked inside the Oval Office and he said, "Welcome to the Oval Office. I'm sure you've heard of it." And got a big laugh from everybody. It is that kind of disarming nature that comes off authentic and really it's really going to be a fun couple days. And I think that tone shift, Will's right, has changed it. Now, of course, you have New York schools. Some of them will now calling off on Election Day and the day after for potential bereavement of their students who can't focus on the class, depending on the election results. So it's just, we're going to talk about that when we get back, because I think that's just such an interesting story. And we're going to take your phone calls. Thanks, Rick, for joining us. I really appreciate it always. And good luck over the next week. Give us a call, 1-800-684-3110, 1-800-684-3110. Got one line open. Some more will open up. If you're on hold, we're going to get to you coming up in just a couple minutes. So stay tuned, 1-800-684-3110. Support the work of the ACLJ at aclj.org. And again, if you didn't see our special that premiered last night, For the Love of God, Save Our Country, it's available now on our YouTube channel, Rumble, however you get your content, it's there. Thousands of you joined. It was really a great time to watch with everybody, but it's available now absolutely for free. And it's a great story of hope that you should send to your friends. Our brand new primetime special. Take a look.
This election is crucial. Your voting rights are under attack. The radical left wants to legalize what went wrong in 2020. Mail-in ballots, banning voter ID, and ballot harvesting, risking fraud. With Biden-Harris policy inviting illegal immigrants, fears of non-citizen voting rise. The ACLJ defends your right to vote. Our legal team is fighting in battleground states and filing lawsuits. We won the Trump ballot ban case at the Supreme Court and are ready to return if needed.
Breaking news. The Supreme Court rules former President Trump back on the ballot.
President Trump is going to remain on the ballot.
Go to aclj.org/election hotline.
Keeping you informed and engaged. Now more than ever. This is Sekulow. And now your host, Logan Sekulow.
Welcome back to Sekulow. We are discussing a lot of topics today. We are going to get to your phone calls. Let's go ahead and start actually with a phone call. Let's go to Kent, who is calling. Listen on the radio in California. Kent, you're on the air.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. I'd like to say God's main purpose for the state is to restrain evildoers, so we're not hindered in doing what God wants us to do, to help build this kingdom which is not of this world, not to have the state do it for us. And not voting is effectively voting for more evil. And voting for, yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, I agree with you that we should be voting, especially as Christians. And again, your values should support your candidate as much as possible. I think that is something that gets lost in the current sort of translation of what it means to be a Christian and what it means to get involved in politics. And I do think there is crossover there because you obviously have your beliefs, a lot of them based on your faith, and they're going to be a candidate, whether that's President Trump, whether that's Vice President Harris, that you may look at and go, well, this lines up with my beliefs, and that's how it should be. That being said, Kent, I do want to encourage you and everyone to watch our new special, because what I found while we were working on this is there are amazing people doing amazing things, really spreading the love of God, regardless of who is president, regardless of who wins on Tuesday. There are people out there doing the Lord's work, if you will. And we really showcase that in our new special, which is called For the Love of God, Save Our Country. It's available now absolutely for free on YouTube, Rumble, or however you get your ACLJ social media. I believe it's on Facebook and X as well. A lot of great comments you could see on the screen. A lot of people were in the live chat last night as we premiered it. And we really want you to go watch it. And I think it's something that, Kent, you should watch. Your friends should watch and share it. Again, it's not necessarily highly political. We do talk about some of the issues that people have made political, but again, a lot of them are, really determined by your faith. But we have some really great stories, a lot of great stories of hope in there, from NBA basketball players to Tulsi Gabbard, who's in it. You have little kind of mini sermons, some great cinematic moments. I host it. It's really worth watching. Again, it's available on our YouTube channel, and you can find it, again, however you get it. It's called For the Love of God, Save Our Country. We'll make sure it goes out also potentially in like the weekly newsletter, and you guys can all see it. Because again, it's free, and it's only free because people like you supported it. And we did 1 day of fundraising for it. 1 day. And over 3,000 of you responded. And we were able to make this project happen. And it was a really cool experiment to see how that would work. It came to me the night before. I was praying, and I believe God spoke to me and said to go on air and do this. And we did it, and we raised the money to make this project in 1 day. And then we disappeared. You didn't hear about it until this week, because it is complete, it's ready, it's now available for you. And those 3,000 people, by the way, their name is in the credits as producers, because we couldn't have done it without them. Those are people who support the ACLJ. And again, we can't do it without you. Give us a phone call, 1-800-684-3110, 1-800-684-3110. Harry Hutchinson's going to be joining us in the next segment. And one of the things we're going to also talk about is sort of the news coming out of New York, which are like, what's the news in New York? That there are schools, specifically one school that Jerry Seinfeld's children actually went to, and he had a statement to make about this, that are closing on Election Day and giving kids the option that may be emotionally distressed due to the election results. They'll be taking either the day off. They said they imagine that they acknowledge this may be a high-stakes time, an emotional time, and no matter the election outcome, we're going to create a safe space to provide students with the support that they will need. Again, and Jerry Seinfeld, obviously he responded, he said, this is why the kids hated it. What kind of lives have these people led that makes them think this is the right way to handle young people, to encourage them to, this is the lesson they are providing for ungodly sums of money. And, and Mummy said, this is why we left. So this is what's happening right now in your schools. Again, that's honestly, he's right, making it worse. Because it's saying if someone becomes the president and you don't like it, you should be going into bereavement instead of dealing with what it is to be an American in society and dealing with election results and going, okay, well, my person didn't win. Moving on. How do I keep influencing change? How do I keep working to be a good person? How do I keep inspiring people? And though it may not love the results, that doesn't change everything in my life. But what we're teaching kids is that this is the most important thing, that politics is the religion. and you got to step away from that. Again, we're going to take your phone calls, and Harry Hutchinson's going to be joining us in the next segment. Go to aclj.org to support the work. Right now, coming up again, Harry Hutchinson, we're going to discuss the U.S. economy's new jobs program. A little bit of a disappointment.
Inflation is mostly back to normal, they say, but when you talk to people, they aren't feeling that. There's this still strong concern about the economy.
Housing, taxes, and inflation are just some of the concerns both campaigns are amplifying as the presidential race enters the home stretch. And when it comes to the latest ABC News Ipsos poll, more Americans trust former President Trump over Vice President Harris to handle the economy.
The new jobs report shows U.S. employers added only 12,000 new jobs in October. That is much lower than normal. The Bureau of Labor says hurricanes and worker strikes are to blame. The unemployment rate stayed at 4.1%.
The month of October saw two hurricanes, Helene and Milton. We also had the Boeing strike. That skewed this number in a big way. We saw jobs added in healthcare, but manufacturing jobs lost more than 40,000 jobs there, mostly because of that strike at Boeing. Also important to note that the government revised lower the number of jobs added in August and also in September by 112,000 jobs. So 112,000 fewer jobs added combined in August and September.
People are going to scratch their heads. Hey, lousy jobs report. Why 4.1? Because the rate comes from the household survey, and the household survey counts those that are off work, absent due to strikes and storms. So they're counted as employed. It remains at 4.1%.
Inflation prices and the increase, we're tracking that. They fell to the lowest level in more than 3 years. The price index that the Feds use to really gauge where we are, hitting a 2.1% annual increase in September. That's down that 2.3% that we saw in the month of August. Though what the Fed calls that core price index was a tad hotter than expected.
So the bad news there is that it came in hotter than expected. It actually ticked up from 2.6% to 2.7%.
And we have Professor Harry Hutchison joining us for an economics segment, as we tend to do.
That's why I let you take the lead.
That's right. This is the type of segment Logan tunes out and says, I trust you that it's important.
Right? It's important, and there are numbers involved. There's math. You guys can take it from here.
But as we know, typically in any election year, the economy, employment, things of that nature really are at the front of people's minds. That is one of the biggest motivators to vote. And we had a new jobs number come out of the Bureau of Labor and Statistics for the amount of jobs added to the economy for the month of October. Now, you'll remember that this administration has already had some issues with reporting of jobs numbers where they've had to revise numbers down almost 800,000 in one jobs report that they over-reported had been added to the economy. So they're not too great at tracking this. But on Friday before the election, the new jobs numbers for October came out, and they were expecting to have added to the economy over 100,000 jobs, which would be a pretty good number. It's not a record-setting number, but that's a good number saying that the economy is stable. Instead, these numbers came out, Professor Hutchison, and they have added, the economy has added just 12,000 jobs. So almost 90% lower than they were expecting were added in the month of October. They're trying to spin it, but how much spin can control the damage that this economic number could do to the people that have not voted or are undecided voters in just 4 days?
Well, it's clearly a disastrous jobs report with only 12,000 jobs added. However, it's more likely than not that fewer jobs than 12,000 were added, given the record of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They've been very, very creative in their prior reports. So it's also important to take a step back and look at the numbers for September and the numbers for August. Guess what? They revised those numbers downward. So this is a pattern. This is a trend that comes from this administration which believes in fictional numbers, it appears. We can compare the jobs numbers in October of 2020, that is the last year of the Trump administration, to the jobs numbers today, and we find that in 2020, I recognize we were coming out of a pandemic, but during Trump's tenure, we added over 600,000 jobs. So I think it's very important for the American people to understand that the economy is not performing very well under the Biden-Harris regime. Nonetheless, the Biden-Harris regime tells us that everything is wonderful. And I think Kamala Harris has said she would do nothing differently than what she's done in the past. And I think that is a big problem, not only for her, but I think for the American people.
And when you see her message of we're going to strengthen the middle class, I come from a middle class background, and trying to really force that narrative, it does bring up, obviously, the questions of if you had the president's ear during the past 4 years and you were the last person in the room, why were you not able to affect more of the policies you think are going to work? Even though you haven't really enumerated what those policies would be. But the Bureau of Labor and Statistics is almost the press shop for the White House times 10. Because we saw the story about the press shop adding the apostrophe to Biden's garbage comment. The Bureau of Labor Statistics always are able to spin a number as best they can, and then almost every report they put out, months later, they revise it down, and it was much, much worse. The fact that they are trying to say 12,000 jobs were added is very concerning, that the real economic picture could be significantly worse when all of the numbers are fully vetted out.
I think that is precisely correct. My guesstimate is we've probably lost closer to 100,000 jobs than gained 12,000 jobs. That's number one. Number two, the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the Biden-Harris regime has been aided and abetted by such news outlets as CNN and CNBC, who were reporting that job growth for October, these were preliminary numbers, exceeded 200,000. They were way off, and anyone who is looking to CNN or CNBC for credibility, I think, is going to be sorely mistaken. So one of the things to keep in mind is those networks apparently are hiring deadbeat economists from the Biden-Harris regime to help them make their forecasts. And I think the numbers that are actually coming out of September and August and October come down to one thing and one thing only: the electrifying incompetence of the Biden-Harris regime.
And Logan, I want to kind of shift this almost to like real world terms as well, because
so we can bring you in.
Yeah. So it's Logan's turn now.
Yeah, thanks.
I'll use less numbers, fewer numbers.
Thank you. Smaller numbers.
The unemployment rate
just hard to find. Just the number's pretty small to begin with.
The unemployment rate across the Biden administration has ticked up across his presidency. It started off in the 3s. It's now up to 4.1. That didn't significantly change this month, but we've talked on this show about real wages not have grown. The amount of take-home pay is not growing for Americans under the Biden administration. But this other statistic that they reported that 7.7% of workers hold part-time jobs for economic reasons. So when you take the unemployment rate, not adding jobs to the economy, but almost 7.7% of the workforce is saying they need part-time work in addition.
Yeah.
That really is the crux of it, because you can say we're adding jobs, but if people aren't making enough or able to afford things, that's the real number that's going to affect something like an election.
Well, I've seen it with friends here specifically. I've seen people, and look, some of them are voting for Harris, and you do want to go, what are you doing? And maybe we all have said, what are you doing? But they are, driving for Uber, or they're picking up groceries with Instacart. They're doing these things in addition to a full-time job just to support and pay for their family. The economy has changed everything. Like I've said before, over the last couple of years, I shouldn't be having to worry about, like, you take your kids to eat at a fast food restaurant. You shouldn't even really be, with what it is, I shouldn't be thinking about it. Shouldn't be thinking about what they're ordering at McDonald's. But then you get a bill, or and you're like, what? How is this at all possible?
And McDonald's, they don't give you the bill at the end.
McDonald's
It's
pretty
up
good.
front.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But they say, here's the number. Not even McDonald's. I mean, a lot of these places, the numbers are just rising and rising and rising. And when you look at that jobs growth, where they expect there to be 6 figures, and they only bring in 10,000 new jobs. I mean, imagine any other business, let's put it as a business point of view, any other business having their expectations, telling their stockholders, we're going to do this. When they miss the mark, when, Netflix misses the mark by 10%, chaos happens to their stock. Look at the American people. They missed the mark by 90+% at this point for the job growth. It's just a sad time too, because you don't want that to be the case, obviously, but it hopefully means it's time for a change. I don't know if it will be. We'll have an interesting week ahead. We got a lot of calls coming in specifically about what next week is going to look like. Because, look, this is our last show on Friday here before we get to Monday, and then we're there, and it's happening. And I'd love to hear from you as you head into this final weekend. 1-800-684-3110. Some of you have been on hold for a while. We're going to get to you. Some have not been on hold for very long. We're going to get to you. So just stay tuned, because, Will, this is the... What did he say? This is the final quarter.
The final quarter, but for layman's terms that weren't high school football coaches, we call it the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
That's what we're heading into.
Yeah,
right.
It's a 2-minute warning.
Yeah.
It's about to happen.
2-minute caution is what Tim Waltz would call it.
Yeah, exactly.
There's the 2-minute caution. We're going to hope that
calls
we
a timeout.
get,
It just goes in the corner.
Right.
All right. 1-800-684-3110 to be on the air. We're going to take all those calls coming up, because, again, we are only a few days away from what is going to be one of the most consequential elections of our lifetime, regardless of how you feel, who you're voting for. We know that this is a really important time, and it's an important time to support the work of the ACLJ, because we're going to be here regardless. We're not going anywhere. And that's why even we did that special, because it's about people who aren't going anywhere, who are going to be there supporting great values and Christian beliefs, regardless of how any sort of election turns out. We got some great calls coming in. Some people are concerned. Some people are excited. We're going to discuss all of that coming up. And, of course, you need to be praying for our country right now. It is a tough time. It is unsettling in many ways. But being just a few days out, maybe there will be some sort of breath of fresh air happening in the next few days. Who knows? I am excited that like I told Rick Grinnell, that the campaigns took a little bit more of a fun last chapter here, as Tim Waltz would say. All right, we'll be right back with more on Sekulow.
The ghost of Joe Biden haunting the Harris campaign.
Garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
One anonymous Democrat member of Congress who's up for re-election says someone needs to park Biden out of sight until after the election.
The White House stenographers come with the House. They are not political. Some of them have been there since Trump and will be there after Biden. And they are now as mad as you will ever hear a stenographer on the record that White House officials working for President Biden tried to change the meaning of their transcript. So it sounded like the president on that Zoom with Voto Latino was just criticizing a comedian instead of all Trump supporters. So now we've got a supervisor from the stenographer's office who is saying, our stenography office transcript released to our distro, which includes the National Archives, is now different than the version edited and released to the public by press office staff.
It reinforces what voters already sense about the Democrats, is that they view that anyone who doesn't vote for Kamala Harris is a racist, a bigot, sexist, who believes in fascism. And this, you see Michelle Obama out there campaigning, saying you have to vote for Kamala Harris, men, otherwise you don't care about women. And this is just a very demeaning, condescending campaign that they're running.
Let's play it one more time.
The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
There's nothing inadvertent about that, period. That's objective. It's not subjective.
The Harris campaign keeps losing control of news cycles because of this garbage comment and the cleanup, and White House staff apparently trying to change the meaning of something that everybody who has watched the clip could hear with their own ears. It is looking like this is becoming a case, a classic DC case of the cover-up being worse than the crime, and the crime was pretty politically bad.
Welcome back to Sekulow. Now it's time to hear from the most important voice in the room. Of course, that's you. And a lot of you have been on hold for a long time. So let's just go in order. Let's start with Gloria in North Carolina. Line 2, you're on the air.
Hey, I live in Advent, but I wanted to say that it seems like to a lot of people around here that it doesn't really matter who wins, because either side's going to be upset that the other side won, and it's going to be like a chaos type situation. But that's pretty much what I feel like George Soros wants.
Yeah, Gloria, I think to respond to that, maybe it's just we need to be praying for our country. We need to be really out there praying that it doesn't, move into some sort of chaotic situation. I think the media is stoking that fire, and what I would hope is that people don't actually feel the way that maybe the media wants you to believe. There are a lot of people out there who are voting, by the way, who this is not what they spend their day doing. They don't watch this show. They don't watch other shows like this. They, hang out with their friends and family. They go to work. They watch Dancing with the Stars, and then they go to bed. If it happened to be on Tuesday, they're going to vote. What you hope is there's actually more of those people who are not going to, make it feel like some sort of chaotic moment and take to the streets. But we will see. We'll see what happens next week, but pray for our country.
Well, and to her point as well, and your point as well, about the media stoking that. This is a Politico headline last night that came out. Meet the sleeper conservatives who could help fulfill Trump's promise to be a dictator on day one. The absurdity of that headline 4 days before an election.
It's clickbait, everybody.
It's clickbait, but fear-mongering and trying to scare people, and it's agenda-based journalism.
It's Rolling Stone saying he's going to let you die. That's going to be what Trump is going to do. He's going to... It is just sad that we're here. All of us are trying to get people to watch, listen. You have to, be a little salacious sometimes, try to get people to click. It's a whole part of the algorithm, what you got to do that. And I understand that's part of the business. But there is a part where you, again, start stoking that fire so much that people like our caller in North Carolina are afraid of what's going to happen on Tuesday. There's also reports right now that Gen Z, half of them, are lying about who they're voting for. Almost 50% is what they're saying. So what does that mean also? Not only that they can't do, but they can't be honest with their friends and with their family on who they're voting for because they're scared. They're scared of the conversation that could happen just by saying who they're considering voting for.
And you even see that the Harris campaign is encouraging lying to your family. Mm-hmm. They are putting out ads directed at women saying, lie to your husband.
Your 1950s
he doesn't
husband.
have to know. That's not the world that I live in or that people I know live in. Yeah. And we live in the conservative South.
Yeah.
I know people who, as couples, are voting differently. And you know what? There's no hatred and animosity within that household. It's actually more demeaning to women, in my opinion, to say, you know what you should do? Lie to your husband.
Yeah.
Because that's saying, they talk about this, and Mark Cuban made that statement yesterday that
what are you doing, Cubes?
Trump is scared. You never see him around strong, intelligent women ever. But yet they're the campaign that is telling strong, intelligent women, American women, you need to lie to your husband about who you're voting for. He'll never know. That's disgusting.
We have that bite from Mark Cuban. Let's go bite 4.
Donald Trump, you never see him around strong, intelligent women. Ever. It's just that simple.
I mean, look, Mark Cuban, I'm a fan of, and I feel like this is such he has become another one of these characters where politics has taken over for everything, and I don't understand why it's necessary for him or his brand. He is sort of a beloved figure.
Right.
With Shark Tank and everything, kids, and everyone. Why do you feel like he needed to step in and make this much of a statement? Support whoever you want to support. You vote whoever you want to vote for, but this is sadly, I saw John Rich put, sadly, this is what Mark Cuban may get remembered for.
Right.
Not the thousands of entrepreneurs that he's helped over the years, not for going from door-to-door salesman to owning the Dallas Mavericks. No, he's going to be known for this gaffe, and it's really unfortunate, and I hate to see it over and over again. Let's try to take some more calls, because a lot of you have been holding for a while. Tom in California. Tom, go ahead.
Good morning. Love you guys. I want to say one thing about only Newt Gingrich has spoken about, but not only do we need to put President Trump back in office, we need to win the Senate and House and reform the civil service system, because career politicians that are in every government are ruining and corrupting and targeting Republicans and conservatives. Thank you.
And Tom, if you look at the rally that Kamala Harris had, she was easily able to get 75,000 people there, because that's the bureaucracy. They went to see their boss. And you know what they want? They want a president that is of the mindset that larger bureaucracy is a better thing. There's a reason that wouldn't have been the same crowd for President Trump that soon before an election, because all the people that are in D.C. at that point are people that work in D.C., in the bureaucracies, and they're all Democrats. But also, it's very telling right now when they're saying we need to sideline Biden. He doesn't need to be out there making things. He's still the sitting president of the United States. Right. And we're apparently operating as a country. I don't know if he's making decisions or not, but if he is or isn't, the fact that the bureaucracy behind him is so strong, holding up the government of this country, is kind of very problematic when it's unelected officials that are the ones governing, and the sitting president is either unable to not call everyone garbage or is doing it on purpose.
Yep, let's continue on. Let's go to Tom in Virginia, line 1. We're running out of time. Tom, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Very quickly, I've heard speculation that I wonder what happens, that the Democrats are not going to turn over the country.
Sure, Tom. I think a lot of people are saying, look, but remember, this is not uncommon. We have to go back, not just to Trump. You go back before that. They were saying disrupt you had celebrities coming out saying don't certify the election for Donald Trump, for Hillary Clinton. Before that, obviously, you have the Bush and Gore situation with the Supreme Court. None of this is uncommon in American politics, and we have to remember that. Pre-social media, this was all still happening. Continuing on quickly, James in Maryland, you're on the air.
Hi. I voted early on last Thursday, and I noticed that on the list of presidential candidates that Kennedy was still on there.
Yeah. Well, technically, I know what you're going to say, because you put that on there. He says if someone votes for him, what happens? Technically, the vote goes to Kennedy, because he suspended his campaign, and a lot of them was too late to get him off. So that's just the nature of it. You look at our Tennessee one, there was probably 20 people.
Well,
listed.
And also with the Kennedy issue is that you saw Democrat states, some of the very same states that tried so desperately to get Trump from off the ballot.
Yeah.
Also the ones saying, sorry, there's nothing we can do here. We have to leave Bobby Kennedy on here. And therefore, I mean, it's all games. As Logan says, politics is professional wrestling.
Yes.
It's all fake.
Yeah. All right. Let's go quickly to Allison in Florida. Allison, we only got about a minute, so go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to share, I work for a company, and we were asked to be on the call. And this call basically was a one-sided, all hands on deck, if Trump gets in, the world is going to go down.
Yeah, Allison, I hate to do this to you, but your connection's just bad. But I know what you're saying. And look, that's similar to what those schools were saying. We're going to have bereavement in high schools because of whoever wins the election. Hey, I want to encourage you right now, because 4,000 plus are watching on YouTube, and I know, and that's just right now live, I know that over half of those typically have never seen us before. So if you've never seen us before, I'm encouraging you to hit that subscribe button right now. Over 443,000 people subscribe to our YouTube channel. So do that right now. Hit that thumbs up. Subscribe. We do the show each and every weekday, Monday through Friday, from noon Eastern to 1 p.m. Eastern also. For 1 hour each day on Monday through Friday, plus a lot of great content our team puts up. So I encourage you right now. If you've never seen us before, or you just haven't done it yet, hit that big subscribe button. Talk to you on Monday.